And Congressman McClintock, Tom McClintock, you know, you're sort of an icon for California. You've been in the Assembly, you've been in the State Senate, and now you're serving us as the Congressman. And I just have to ask, yeah, we've known each other for so many years. What's the difference between serving in the Assembly, the State Senate, and now the Congress?
The eerie thing.
What's that?
The eerie thing about it
Yes.
is to realize that all of the debates on public policy that we fought and lost in the California legislature on public policy that turned this golden state into an economic basket case, we're now debating and losing in Nancy Pelosi's Congress. And the thing that was hovering over all the debates in Sacramento was at least the consolation that if the left actually destroyed California's economy, there were still 49 other states we could all move to. Where are we going to go if we allow them to destroy our country?
Let me do something a little different, because a lot of the standard sound bites you hear on radio, television, whatever, are very actually pretty boring for the people that are out here going to vote in this election. A couple of questions you might have some insight on that nobody else does.
Okay.
Where did the Republican Party go wrong, number one? And that's a pretty broad brush, but I'm going to maybe tie these two questions together. But you know, we didn't get here, we didn't lose the Congress or the Senate, either one, without some reason.
Well, of course.
So what do you think the main reason was for us losing as a Republican Party? Where did they go off the rails?
Republicans abandoned their principles and the voters abandoned the Republicans. It is not that complicated. The results of the 2006 and 2008 elections were not due to the fact that American voters abandoned Republican principles. They looked at Republicans and decided Republicans had abandoned Republican principles. Republicans promised to rein in all of the deficits, to reduce the burdens that government's placing on our families, to reduce the crushing regulations that are destroying commerce, to secure our borders. And they did exactly the opposite. Why is anybody surprised? The voters threw them out.
Well, let me ask this. As we said, you know, you just lost the Congress and then it was gone. But let's ask this question. First of all, I'm going to ask you particularly. One, did you vote for TARP or against it?
Oh, well, I wasn't in the Congress then, but I certainly stood against it on the campaign trail.
Were you around when they had the stimulus package come up?
Oh, yes, and I was one of a united House Republican conference to oppose the stimulus bill.
All right. What do you think of your fellow Republicans that voted for those two items?
I don't think we had any Republicans vote for the stimulus. I think that the Republicans who voted for TARP made a huge mistake. A lot of them paid the price for that mistake at the ballot box. Those who survived are sadder and wiser.
One of the things that was
and scared to death of the Tea Party movement.
Well, that's exactly where I was going with that, because in other words, like Topsy, that grew out of the fact that and I'm not too sure whether or not all of the Republicans voted 100% against the stimulus. I think there were some that did vote for it. Are you sure?
I don't recall any voting for the stimulus.
None in the Congress that you know of?
We had one vote for Obamacare and a handful vote for cap and
What
trade.
about Dreyer and Campbell?
They stood with us on those.
Okay. At any rate, the bottom line is that the Tea Party did become fruitful after these two votes, and of course Obamacare, a variety of other things that came about. So my question to you is, we've got a party, but who's leading it?
You know, in times of crisis, throughout American history. The country's been saved by the American people standing up on their own and telling their leaders to lead, follow, or get out of the way.
Right.
What's saving America is not America's leaders, it's America's people. One by one, individual Americans are beginning to sense that their country is drifting into grave danger, and one by one, those Americans are standing up. There's a very poignant tale of Abraham Lincoln on his inaugural train from Springfield to Washington, stopping in what was then the little town of Indianapolis. They stopped to reprovision the train, and during that break, Lincoln came out to visit with a small crowd that had gathered. And somebody took down these words. He said, "Of the American people, it may be said, when they rise united in defense of their freedom and their union, the gates of hell shall not prevail against them. I appeal to you, fellow citizens, constantly to bear in mind that not with the president, not with the office holders, but with you is the question. Shall the liberties of our nation be preserved to the latest generation?" We're watching that leadership emerge.
Hey, Ron, one second, Ron. At lunch today, you mentioned the Reagan Revolution. Could you give us the comparison that you said at lunch today about the Tea Party?
Oh, well, what is the Tea Party? Pollsters tell us about 60% of it is Republican, but 20% is independent, and another 20% of Tea Party members are Democrats. Now, before the Tea Party movement, we had another name for such a phenomenon. We called that the Reagan Coalition, and we're watching it come alive again in a new generation.
One of the things that is disturbing, if you look at the numbers, are if you look at every luminary in the Republican Party, from Sarah Palin all the way down to Newt Gingrich. But having said that, there was no pun intended. But anyway, having said that, the whole litany of Republicans that are available for leadership, there's no distinct leader coming out of it. It's all like in single digits almost.
Well, my experience has been people that you normally talk about for an election 2 years ahead of that election are very seldom the same people you're talking about 2 weeks before that election. History summons people, and that process hasn't begun yet. What I do know is this: we have got some absolutely remarkable leaders available on the Republican bench. I wonder if there's a time in recent memory when we've had a stronger Republican bench. Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, you mentioned Sarah Palin. We have a number of governors who've distinguished themselves in fights against the public employee unions.
You know, we're here with one of my favorite people on the planet, Bill Saraceno, who is an old schoolmate of mine from 1959 or 60, one of those two. Anyway, we go back some time, and you know, it's a joy to see you, first of all, sir.
Thank you.
And we're here at the Western CPAC, and you were here a couple of years ago. We chatted
right.
about how things were or weren't or were going to be, and it's pretty interesting if you think about it, because that was Michael Reagan was here that year, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yeah, and we had some conversation about what the future of the Republican Party was going to be like, and golly, it starts all over again. It's like deja vu all over again, as Yogi would say. So let's start off with explaining to the people that you're not a congressman, you're not an elected official. You're very engaged in the whole political process, however. If you feel comfortable saying what you do with that part of the process, fine. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But the reality is that you've got some. You're as wise as anyone might be that's engaged in politics. So I'm just going to ask you this: where's the leadership in the Republican Party?
At the moment, it is very diverse, and which is not unusual for a party out of power. I mean, the Democrats know who their leader is. It's the president. 2 years ago, we knew who our leader was. It was the president, whether you like it or not. If your party has the White House.
Yeah, George and Laura, we knew.
And the Republican, then it goes down to the Republican leaders in Congress. And at this point, neither John Boehner nor Mitch McConnell have the public profile or persona that engages the imagination of people. That is going to change the election in 2 weeks from this Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is going to be a revolution. It is going to be a Republican conservative volcano that is going to spew out all kinds of personalities and new potential leaders.
You know, I really have to tell you, I went on and I watched the Delaware debate with Chris Coons and Christine O'Donnell, and you know, I was all prepared to find what I call a bad Sarah Palin. What I found, in fact, was a good Sarah Palin. She's far superior to Sarah Palin in many respects. She's a lot sweeter, number one. Number two, she's a lot more knowledgeable on the issues. And I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, I had completely distanced myself from the whole Tea Party idea until I saw how well she did in that debate.
Well, I think that the misperception about the Tea Party that you held, that a lot of conservatives held, is slowly being dissipated as you meet people associated with it. And the thing about the Tea Party is that it's a label really without leader. You ask, where is the Republican Party leadership? Who is the leader of the Tea Party? There is no 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people that are leaders of the Tea Party. That's a weakness, but it's also a strength. And the thing about the Tea Party people that has impressed me is that it reminds me of us when we were getting active in politics. I mean, you said deja vu all over again. I first got active in 1964 when I was in high school for Barry Goldwater when he ran for president.
Sure.
And back then, we were facing a calcified, moderate Republican establishment that didn't want any newcomers. All right, go forward 16 years to when Reagan ran for president in 1980 or 76. Conservatives were facing a calcified, moderate Republican leadership that didn't want any newcomers. You look back in Newt Gingrich when he became House Republican leader. So you'll never be a sneak thief, that's for sure.
Larry does that kind of stuff. He has a he's born in the year of the tiger. He saw a tiger in a china shop. No, it's okay. It doesn't apply.
1988 or 1990, when Newt Gingrich became Republican minority leader in the House of Representatives,
right,
he had to overthrow a calcified, moderate Republican leadership that didn't want any newcomers.
Right.
I don't have to hide it. They don't mind that I'm having my gin.
No, if my hand gets in the camera, then I have to get paid.
Well, let me tell you.
And my point is
yes.
Last year, the Tea Party are new people, conservatives, who are facing a entrenched Republican leadership that doesn't want any newcomers. Well, there's nothing new to this, but it is a very healthy thing.
You know what? I think what people miss, they miss the point that rhinos are finally being identified in the jungle of politics. That we finally understand that a rhino is something we can shoot at and maybe get out of office because it's not a real Republican. It doesn't carry the real Republican affidavits of what we would like to have happen.
And I am a very conservative guy and vote against. I mean, my first political involvement was Barry Goldwater against Nelson Rockefeller.
Right.
So I cut my teeth on inter-party squabbles, and I still do. And there's a certain. You don't have to agree 100% of the time, as far as I'm concerned, to be a Republican in good standing or a conservative in good standing. But the vast majority of the time, and there are some basics as far as small government, low taxes, strong national defense, respect for the individual initiative. Dennis Prager
Second Amendment.
has a Second Amendment. Dennis Prager has a great saying that the radio host, Dennis Prager, says, the larger the government, the smaller the citizen.
That's true.
That's a pretty good
It's a good one.
sentence encapsulation of what I think the Republican conservative message is.
Now look.